This is problem 11 on the sample test problems for test number 2. Function f gives the total cost in dollars with shipping and handling of ordering X dollars of merchandise from a certain online merchant. F of X equals X plus 10 if X is between 0 and 50, 1.2X if X is between 50 and 150, and just X if X is bigger than or equal to 150. Part A. Evaluate F of 30, F of 80, and F of 150. So to evaluate 30, we need to first decide which of these three intervals 30 lives in. And hopefully we see that 30 is between 0 and 50. So we are applying that top rule. And the top rule is X plus 10. So X is 30 plus 10 is 40. Next one is F of 80. Again, looking at the three intervals, we should see that 80 lives in that middle one. So the rule here is the middle one, 1.2x, 1.2 times 80, which is 96. And then finally, f of 150. 150 is in the last rule, just barely. It's the first number that gets to apply that last rule. And the last rule is just x. So you just copy the number that's in the parentheses. F of 150 is 150. Part B, sketch the graph of f. All right, let's go ahead and start by plotting the 3 points that we found here. In purple, we found f of 30 was 40. That is to say, when x is 30, y is 40. So we will find that point, x is 30, y is 40, and it's right there. In blue, we have f of 80 is 96. So we'll go to 80, 96. Somewhere around there. And the last point was just off the top of the screen, 150 and also 150. So we'll plot that in green. There. Okay, so I've got three different rules, three different parts of my function. I've got three different colors, so let's do them separately. Now let's go back up to the first rule, this x plus 10. So hopefully we know the equation y equals x plus 10 is a line, and the y-intercept is 10. And in order to draw a line, I just need 2 points. So let's go ahead and plot the y-intercept is at 10. That's right there. And this is enough. I could just connect my line. But the thing is, I need to know where it stops. And so it feels like maybe I don't want just any 2 points, but maybe I want the starting point and the ending point. And so let's go ahead and find the ending point. The ending point is here at x equals 50. So if I plug 50 in there, it didn't ask me to do this, but if I plug 50 into the 50 plus 10 rule, I get 50 is the x and 60 is the y. So let's plot 50 and 60. There. And so that's actually the end of my line. And so that first point that we plotted there in the middle, you know, it's nice to see that the line goes through there, but really, if you're plotting a line for a piecewise function, you want the first point and the last point. And first and last are defined by these numbers here. Okay, let's try the 1.2x. Same idea, we'll do this in blue. Y equals 1.2x. Hopefully we know the graph of that is also a line. So 1.2x, let's see. The y-intercept of that is 0, so I could put 0 here. But the thing is, 0 doesn't really make sense because x equals 0 doesn't get to be inside of this rule. So it feels like the two numbers that I'm really interested in are 50 and 150. So I'm going to put up here, plug in 50 and plug in 150. So I get 1.2 times 50, and then we'll separately do 1.2 times 150. Okay, so 1.2 times 50 is 60, and 1.2 times 150, is that 180? And so these are the points that I'm going to graph. When x is 50, y is 60, and when x is 150, y is 180. So let's plot those 2 points in blue. 50, 60. 50 and 60 is right there. It happens there's a dot there. I'm going to put an open circle on it for a second. And then the other point was 150, 180. So we go to 150, and then we go up to 180. 150 up to 180. I think it's that point right there. Well, actually, let's make that an open circle. And so my line is supposed to connect the dots, and we'll go ahead and connect the dots. No surprise that it does go through that blue point we had plotted way in the beginning. But let's figure out what's happening at the beginning and end again. So looking up here, apparently the rule doesn't apply to x equals 50 because it's just a 50 less than x, not a 50 less than or equal to x. If x is actually 50, you need to plug that into the top rule. So that's why we put the open circle, and because of this less than symbol, we put another open circle. That's this one over here. Instead of filling that in, it's an open circle because of the less than. Here's the last part of this, is that this kind of circled purple point doesn't really make sense. You're not supposed to have a circle and a filled in. It's either there or it's not there. And so don't do what I did. Don't put a filled in circle and an open circle. It's either there or it's not. And because of the filled in part, it's there. So the open circle really has no business of being there. Normally there would be an open circle, but it happened that the point was already included for other reasons besides blue. Okay, and then finally the last one, we'll do this in green. The bottom row is the function y equals x. Hopefully we know the graph of y equals x is just a line. This rule starts at 150. And in fact, that's exactly the green point that we've already got on the graph. And if we just plug in, say, one other point, maybe we'll plug in 200. No, let's not plug in 200. Let's plug in 180. That's fine. So if we plug in 180 into this rule, we get y equals 180, and that's just what it is. So if x is 180, then so is y. So we're going to plot that point 180, 180. So 180 on the x, 180 on the y lands me here. And we'll go ahead and connect the dots. And technically this line is supposed to go forever. So let's connect the dots. And it goes off and to the right. And so something kind of funny happened. You actually pay less if you order, say, $160 of merchandise. You pay less than if you had only ordered $149 of merchandise. And that's because of the shipping costs. So let's move on to part C. Describe in words how the merchant's shipping costs are determined. So looking up at the rules, in the first rule, it's x plus 10, and that's if x is between 0 and 50. Okay, so if your cost of the merchandise is between 0 and 50, so if the merchandise costs less than $50, or equal to $50, then something happens. The rule here is x plus 10. You take x, that was the cost of the actual merchandise, and you add 10. What is that plus 10? That plus 10 must be the shipping and handling. If the merchandise costs less than or equal to $50, then shipping is a flat rate, meaning it's always of $10. So if you buy something that costs $1, you're going to pay an extra 10 in shipping. If you buy something that costs $50, you'll pay an extra 10 in shipping. In the second row, that is when the cost is between 50 and 150. So if the merchandise costs between $50 and $150, let's see if we can figure out the shipping costs. The rule here is 1.2x. 1.2x, another way to think of 1.2x is to think of it as 1.20 times x, and 1.20 as a percentage is 120% of x. And so what that means is that you're paying your x, that's your 100%,
but then there's this extra 20%, and it must be that that extra 20% is the cost of shipping. So if your merchandise costs between $50 and $150, then shipping is 20% of your merchandise cost. And then finally in the last row, if the merchandise costs bigger than or equal to $150, then you pay X. Well, X is what you pay without any shipping. So it must be that there's free shipping here. So if the merchandise costs at least $150, then shipping is free.